Dark Souls and me have had an on-again, off-again relationship ever since we met in October of 2011. At first it was hard to make it work. She would get abusive and I would say some things I didn't mean. I'd leave, but I always came back thinking it would get better. Now that I've finally beaten the damn thing, I'm not surprised to find that many people had the same experience as me, of picking up and then quickly putting down the game for long periods of time. For those not in the know, Dark Souls is the video game embodiment of every bully you had in high school, and it constantly sets out to wear your wimpy nerd ass as a hat and steal all your lunch money and souls and humanity. It's an example of high difficulty through severe punishment. Small mistakes often get you killed, and big mistakes mean you may need to re-roll your character. On the surface, it looks like a game that neither wants to be played nor beaten, but once you get into it, you'll find everything you need because Dark Souls secretly loves its players and wants to see them succeed. I believe this is what anime fans call being a tsundere. One of the things that really stands out to me in Dark Souls is how well the combat is balanced for one-on-one encounters. Both the players and the enemies are subject to the same mechanics, which include blocking, parries, counters, back attacks, etc. It can be slow, but it's deliberate and varied enough that it stays interesting and tense throughout. However, things kind of fall apart in combat against multiple enemies because you don't really have the tools to deal with more than one enemy at a time. The timing of attacks and limited stamina to take actions makes getting ganged up on kinda like being the only available asshole at an all-male orgy. Your shit's about to get fucked. Which is fine because the mechanics reward being cautious by drawing out one enemy at a time. And if it didn't punish recklessness, there wouldn't be any point to that. All of this works really great until you reach an encounter that will always have more than one enemy. The Gargoyles, a boss fight early in the game, are like this. Like I said, the timing of attacking, dodging, and blocking makes it so that you can barely have enough time to land a hit and narrowly block or dodge to safety. And that's awesome, it keeps things tight and tense, and if you fail, you know why and can adjust. But when you add a third wheel to this dance of death, things change. Your narrow chance for escape is now replaced with the second enemy fusing his boot with your ass. To compensate, the game includes the option to call in other players for help, but then the situation does a complete 180. See, the combat's balanced for one-on-one encounters for both the player and the enemies. So when you have 2 or 3 players up against the AI gets completely wrecked. The fight literally goes from being something that took me about a dozen tries and hours of grinding to do solo, into a fight that lasts maybe 30 seconds, and no one so much as even chafes their taint. And I can't help but feel like I've missed some of the fun when that happens. It just seems a bit odd that my 2 options are either breathe through the fight with no challenge, or to be given an axe and fire colonoscopy. If you're gonna make a brutal slap me in the face with demon cock game, why give me the option to completely puss out? This isn't as much of a problem with the later bosses, because even with help they can give you a run for your souls, but the Gargoyles get absolutely crushed when you have backup. However, the truth is I actually really like the multiplayer mechanics overall. If you're stuck on a tough boss and are hollow, which you will be because you just lost to the boss, you can offer to help a living player to gain humanity, and it also gives you a chance to learn the fight better. And that's brilliant. Both players benefit, it fits well with the theme of the game, and it offers a bit of dynamic storytelling through gameplay. Lost souls seeking to regain humanity by helping the living. It's unique and adds some relief when things are getting extra discouraging. The game oftentimes seems more punishing than difficult, and there's a particular moment in the game I'd like to use as an example. There's a point in the game in the sewer, which is still fairly early on, where there is a hard to spot hole that you can fall into. I know it's hard to spot because I fell in it even after I knew there was a hole nearby. So once you fall in this thing, you're lost, so that sucks. You also take a large amount of damage when you land, and then you realize that this room is full of enemies. And not just any enemies, these are enemies you've never seen before. And as luck would have it, they're using a status effect you've never seen before. This status effect is different from any other status effect you've encountered because once this one affects you, you die. Which of course you didn't know. And to top it all off, once you respawn, you are permanently affected by Curse, which keeps your health at 50% of its max until you buy a cure. But guess what? You died and you lost all your souls, so you can't buy it. Now, your bloodstain is in an area you don't know, surrounded by enemies you don't know how to fight, you permanently have half health, and if you die again, you can't recover your stuff. Now that's a lot to throw at a player for merely misstepping. Contrary to how it might sound though, I actually really like this event, because this is where meek little item hoarders like me excel. I had plenty of piggy bank souls to smash open and buy the cure, although it was a bit tedious, it wasn't a major setback. But I can't blame anyone who says that Curse was the cherry on top of the fuck this shit I'm gonna play Pokemon cake for them. And this I feel is how Dark Souls scares off potential mates. It doesn't just start difficult, it's also brutally punishing right off the bat. I found a lot of the dirtiest, sneakiest, most cruel moments of the game to be near the beginning, then this can easily scare off new players. If I made a list of the spots that I had the most problems with, they would all be within the first few hours of the game. I think many players who quit could have handled the difficulty, but they set down the game after losing hours worth of progress to a punishing trick or trap. The difficulty is great. The punishment could have been spread out a little more. I can't imagine somebody trying to get through this whole thing for the first time in offline mode without using an online resource, like a wiki or forum. Not to say that it couldn't be done, I'm just saying I know I personally wouldn't make it. I went with the cleric because I like healing abilities, and I'm not ashamed to say that about halfway through the game, I had to start looking around the internet on how to get a decent weapon. My +5 mace was more like aggressive foreplay than any kind of real ordnance. So a few hours of reading about weapon types, stat scaling, faith, embers, divine weapons, occult weapons, and titanite types, I had a basic grasp of how to get things done. And I may be being a little pessimistic, but I'm not sure if I would have figured that out all on my own. And again, not because it couldn't be done, it's just I have an entire bookshelf of backlog games that don't seem to hate me and are vying for my attention. The difficulty tended to fluctuate between ball-bustingly hard and nut-numbingly easy, when of course the perfect amount of testicular stimulation is right in the middle. I was able to just face-tank a few of the later bosses. On the other hand, I was pleased that the last boss is a bit of a spaz, constantly and frantically swinging around his 11-foot Sephiroth complex, which made my face-tanking strategy less than optimal to say the least. It was appropriately the most challenging fight in the game for me, and I eventually had to tap in Solaire. However, the great thing about Dark Souls is you never know what to expect. So even if the next area or boss will be easy for you, you will still be timidly creeping along, ready to kiss your ass goodbye at any moment. The tension and atmosphere really draw you in. Dark Souls needs to learn that the trick to being abusive is that the victim needs to love you first, so you don't scare them away. It's the same reason you don't tell someone you're into S&M on the first date. Let them get attached before you break out the whips, chains, and ball gags. But for those who get through that initial round of dick punches, there is a fantastically enjoyable, deep and rewarding game to be had. It's easily one of my favorite games of late, if not of all time, and I can't wait to get own some more in the sequel, which, since this video is coming out late, I'm already currently doing.